Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're taking a nostalgic ride back to 1973 to uncover the thrilling world of Live and Let Die, an action-packed Bond adventure bursting with high-stakes espionage, unforgettable characters, and exotic locales. The story follows James Bond, portrayed for the first time by Roger Moore, as he investigates a mysterious crime syndicate tied to a global drug trafficking operation. Racing against time, 007 faces off against the cunning Kananga, also known as Mr. Big, the enigmatic Baron Samedi, and a host of formidable foes. Along the way, he teams up with the captivating Solitaire, whose psychic abilities hold the key to Kananga's nefarious plans. This film not only introduced audiences to a new era of Bond but also solidified Roger Moore's status as one of cinema's most iconic secret agents. Stay tuned as we dive into 20 things you never knew about this classic movie. Sean Connery's declined offer. Sean Connery's departure from the Bond franchise was a momentous event. By that point, he had already returned once in Diamonds Are Forever, 1971, after initially bowing out post You Only Live Twice, 1967. Connery was often quoted as saying he was done with the character. The enormous offer from United Artists and Eon Productions to entice him back for Live and Let Die highlights how valuable he was seen by the studio. Yet, Connery's desire to move on creatively, and perhaps his frustration with certain constraints of the role, outweighed the monetary allure. His endorsement of Roger Moore speaks to the camaraderie among British actors of that era. Moore was already a household name thanks to his roles in television shows like The Saint and The Persuaders, and he had long been on the shortlist of potential Bond actors. In fact, Moore was once rumored to be Ian Fleming's personal choice, at least as some fans speculated, because Moore had that quintessentially British mix of suavity and a dash of roguishness. Connery's seal of approval likely helped ease the transition for audiences still unsure if Moore could fill his predecessor's shoes. Connery would, of course, return to the role one more time in the non-Eon production Never Say Never Again, 1983, a reimagining of Thunderball, which was produced outside the usual Broccoli-Saltzman stable. The existence of that rival Bond film in 1983, the same year Moore starred in Octopussy, makes the interplay of finances, creative rights, and personal preference even more fascinating. But at the time of Live and Let Die, the franchise was at a crossroads, and letting Moore take the mantle proved to be a refreshing pivot that opened the doors for a more playful era of 007 adventures. The missing hat and Bond's evolving traditions. Fans of the early Bond films might recall that in the classic gun barrel sequences of the 1960s, Bond was depicted wearing a trilby or fedora-like hat, an artifact of the era's fashion and a nod to how Connery's Bond used hats as a personal style statement, even employing them in clever ways, like throwing it onto a hat rack in Goldfinger. By the 1970s, though, men's fashion had changed dramatically. The original Bond hat felt increasingly anachronistic, and Moore's Bond sported a sense of polished comfort that didn't need such an accessory. Moreover, the decision to temporarily set aside Bond's signature Walther PPK and the shaken, not stirred vodka martini was a deliberate attempt to highlight that Moore's Bond was his own character. Over time, producers realized that the audience, while open to novelty, still expected many of the beloved Bond hallmarks. This push and pull between innovation and tradition is part of what keeps the franchise vital. By The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977, Moore was fully settled in, and many of these tropes had returned, though the fedora never made a comeback in the opening sequence. It was the dawn of a new aesthetic, where wide ties, flared trousers, and broad lapels were the norm, and a hat simply didn't fit the suave lines of 1970s sartorial trends. Some viewers may notice that in Live and Let Die, Bond actually uses a Smith & Wesson revolver at times instead of the trusty Walther PPK. This was part of that evolving traditions concept. In subsequent movies, Moore would also occasionally switch up his firearms, indicating that Bond was a bit more flexible with his hardware than Connery's portrayal had been. Ian Fleming's novel origins. By the time Fleming wrote Live and Let Die, he was already establishing many of the key elements that would define the Bond literary universe: exotic settings, beautiful and mysterious women, ruthless villains, and a sense of danger lurking around every corner. The novel deals heavily with voodoo, pirate gold, and the infiltration of criminal enterprises within the American underworld, a reflection of mid-century anxieties about foreign threats breaching American soil. The original working title, The Undertaker's Wind, referred to a phenomenon in Jamaica, where Fleming had his Goldeneye estate, and exuded the sense of dread and superstition that laced the novel. Interestingly, elements of the Live and Let Die novel popped up in both For Your Eyes Only, 1981, and License to Kill, 1989. For instance, the idea of feeding someone to sharks is seen in License to Kill, while For Your Eyes Only borrows other thematic bits from Fleming's earlier works. The Bond films often adapted Fleming's material in a patchwork style, pulling scenes, villains, and plot devices from multiple novels. This ensured that even if a movie wasn't a straightforward adaptation of a single Fleming book, it still retained the flavor of the original literature. Fleming's personal experiences in naval intelligence during World War II deeply influenced his Bond novels. He used the Jamaican setting extensively, both in Live and Let Die and other works, since he spent a significant amount of time on the island. That Jamaican backdrop is part of what makes the novel stand out among the early Bond books, and it also underlines the significance of local culture, myths, and landscapes. Cold War plot turned drug trade. By 1973, the spy movie landscape had grown more varied. Audiences had gone through the height of the Cold War Red Scare films and were seeking something fresh. The 1970s saw a surge in gritty, street-level crime dramas, from The French Connection, 1971, to a host of blaxploitation films that tackled the drug epidemic and inner-city crime. Adapting Live and Let Die with a focus on heroin smuggling was not just a creative choice but a commercial one. It tapped into cultural anxieties about rising drug use, international trafficking, and powerful cartels. Moreover, substituting the Soviet threat with a charismatic dictator-like figure from the Caribbean, Kananga, and situating significant portions of the action in Harlem and New Orleans gave the film a distinctly American flavor. This approach further differentiated it from earlier Bond films that largely revolved around Soviet infiltration or independent megalomaniacs aiming for world domination. As comedic or outlandish as certain elements of Live and Let Die might seem to modern viewers, the drug storyline was very much in line with the more realistic criminal underpinnings of the 1970s. Richard Maibaum's critique of the film's plot, calling it incongruous with the Bond formula, reveals an interesting tension behind the scenes. Maibaum contributed significantly to the series by co-writing or polishing many of the scripts. His final Bond film, License to Kill, indeed sees Bond going rogue to target a Latin American drug lord, a storyline widely viewed as one of the darkest and most realistic in the franchise. It's a testament to how certain real-world themes like drug trafficking eventually found a comfortable spot within the Bond universe. Casting close calls. The Who Could Have Been Bond game is a perennial favorite among fans. Steve McQueen, known for his cool demeanor in films like Bullet and The Great Escape, would have brought a rugged American twist that might have felt off-brand for the quintessentially British secret agent. Paul Newman's icy blue eyes and suave screen presence might have fit better, but again, it would have been a departure from Bond's British origins. Burt Reynolds was, by his own admission, quite a stretch for a role requiring a certain stiff upper-lip composure, though his comedic timing and brash charm might have mirrored some of the humor that Moore eventually brought. Anthony Hopkins, trained in the classical tradition, could have delivered a refined intellectual spin on Bond, but perhaps lacked the physical movie star aura that producers sought at the time. Ursula Andress's possible return as Honey Rider raised eyebrows within the production. Though she was iconic in Dr. No, 1962, reintroducing her character with a different Bond was deemed too great a continuity leap. The idea of reusing Bond girls was something Eon Productions mostly avoided, except in cameo or tribute-like forms, e.g., Maud Adams appeared in two different roles, but as entirely different characters in The Man with the Golden Gun and Octopussy. Roger Moore was consistently in the running for Bond even before Dr. No, 1962, was cast, but his commitments to television prevented him from taking the role. By the time Live and Let Die entered production, Moore was free from those obligations and was at the top of the list. The synergy between Moore's existing fan base, his established persona, and his rapport with Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman made him a nearly inevitable choice. Roger Moore's practical joke, known for being a bit of a joker, Roger Moore orchestrated a prank on co-star Jane Seymour during a lunch break at Pinewood Studios. Seymour had a habit of asking each person in turn to pass her condiments, so Moore conspired with the crew that when she sat down, they would all get up and leave. This left Jane Seymour in tears, and Sir Roger would later say in his autobiography that he regretted pulling the prank. Filming challenges in Harlem. Filming in Harlem presented significant challenges for the production team. The location was considered dangerous, necessitating the payment of protection money. Once this fund was gone, the filmmakers were strongly advised to leave. A particularly ill-fated attempt at set decoration led to further complications. To enhance the dilapidated atmosphere of a back alley scene, the art department cut what they believed to be abandoned cables. However, a telephone company repairman appeared following complaints from locals who couldn't use their phones, causing much embarrassment. An improvised boat chase. The iconic boat chase in Live and Let Die was largely improvised on the spot, with the script offering only the vague directive, "Create the most terrific boat chase you've ever seen." The filmmakers relied on location scouting and on-set ingenuity to bring the sequence to life. The collision between a speedboat and Sheriff Pepper's police car was a completely unplanned accident, which is probably why we don't see the actual impact in the film. The Solitaire casting controversy. The idea of casting Diana Ross underscores how the producers were flirting with an even bolder reimagining of Bond's female leads. By 1973, Ross was already a global music superstar, known for her work with the Supremes and her subsequent solo career. Casting her would have introduced a wholly different dynamic to the film. Yet, the decision to remain faithful to Fleming's text ultimately led to Jane Seymour's breakout role. Seymour's ethereal beauty and on-screen innocence contrasted sharply with the film's otherwise gritty themes. However, the introduction of Rosie Carver as a black CIA agent who becomes romantically involved with Bond was significant. It signaled a shift in the franchise's willingness to engage with a more diverse cast of characters. Unfortunately, the censorship in apartheid-era South Africa reveals the limitations of the time. Nonetheless, from a global perspective, Hendry's casting was a milestone. Over the decades, the Bond series would feature increasingly diverse Bond women, though it would take time before more inclusive representation became commonplace. Jane Seymour's role as Solitaire required her to convey a mystical vulnerability. The character's psychic abilities and tarot card readings lent an air of mysticism to the film, aligning with the voodoo theme. The notion of destiny and fate in both romance and conflict is underscored by Solitaire's reliance on the cards, something rarely explored in subsequent Bond films with such a literal supernatural edge. Paul McCartney's theme song Ultimatum. Harry Saltzman wanted an African-American female vocalist for the Live and Let Die theme song. However, Paul McCartney insisted that he and his band Wings perform the song if it was to be included in the film. A compromise was reached. McCartney and Wings would provide the iconic opening and closing credits version, while B.J. Arnault would sing the song during a pivotal scene at Mr. Big's nightclub. McCartney's rendition, now considered a Bond classic, narrowly missed winning the Academy Award for Best Song. Double-decker bus stunt. One of the hallmarks of the Bond series is its inventive action set pieces. Running a modified London double-decker bus under a low bridge in Jamaica was the kind of audacious spectacle that fans craved. Technically, the stunt required precise engineering to ensure the top of the bus would shear off in a controlled manner, rather than collapsing unpredictably or injuring the stunt personnel. The use of rollers was crucial, allowing the top to slide smoothly off. Jane Seymour's presence on the bus during the stunt underscores both her dedication and the production's faith in the stunt coordinators. Such stunts carried significant risk, especially in an era before CGI and advanced safety protocols. The scene remains emblematic of Bond's resourcefulness. Who else but 007 would hijack a double-decker bus as a getaway vehicle? This bus stunt followed in a tradition of wild vehicle action. In preceding films, Bond had raced in everything from boats to bobsleds. In subsequent Moore films, viewers would see 007 pilot a small aircraft through a hangar, Octopussy, navigate a hovercraft, Moonraker, if we count the Amazon boat chase modifications, and even drive a Citroën 2CV in For Your Eyes Only. The double-decker remains one of the more eccentric but memorable choices. Snakes, Fear, and Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi stands out among Bond villains for his supernatural flair and eerie theatricality. Holder, a dancer and choreographer in addition to being an actor, brought a mesmerizing physical presence to the role. His tall stature, distinctive voice, and flamboyant movements contributed to an otherworldly aura. Ironically, his intense fear of snakes clashed with the film's heavy reliance on serpent imagery, which tied into the voodoo motifs. The anecdote about Princess Alexandra, cousin to Queen Elizabeth II, visiting the set highlights the sort of star power and regal interest the Bond franchise could command. Holder's bravery in going through with the coffin scene, solely because of her presence, gives the incident an almost fairy tale-like twist. Meanwhile, Michael Eben's snake bite was a real-life reminder that the production was playing with unpredictable elements. Despite thorough safety measures, animals, especially snakes, can be unpredictable. Baron Samedi's character is loosely based on the Haitian Loa, spirit, of the same name in Vodou tradition, who is often depicted with a top hat and a skeleton face. This lent an air of authenticity, albeit through a Bondified lens, to the film's depiction of voodoo culture. Holder's background in dance and visual arts made him a perfect candidate to represent this mystical figure. He moved with an otherworldly grace that amplified Samedi's haunting presence. Dennis Edwards's genuine terror Bond's pre-credit sequences often deliver a shocking or thrilling moment to hook audiences from the start. In Live and Let Die, the murder by snake scene is both unsettling and memorable. The fact that Edwards's real-life fainting spell was edited into the final footage adds to the scene's verisimilitude. Filmmakers sometimes welcome these unplanned reactions if they enhance the sense of danger or authenticity on screen. The Bond series is well known for stylized violence and carefully orchestrated stunts, but moments like this remind us that sets can still be intense environments, particularly when live animals are involved. Edwards's fainting also foreshadows the tension that snakes would bring throughout the film, reinforcing the idea that Bond was stepping into a world of voodoo, superstition, and tangible mortal threats. Roger Moore's on-set diary. Fans seeking first-hand insight into Bond's production often turn to cast memoirs or diaries. Moore's diary for Live and Let Die is particularly valuable because it marks his inaugural outing as 007. He details not only the day-to-day shooting schedule but also his personal reflections on stepping into the role, interactions with the cast and crew, and the myriad challenges of filming on location. Moore's perspective is light-hearted yet honest, reflecting his personal charm. His notes document the grandeur of the Jamaican and Louisiana settings, the camaraderie with co-stars, and the tension of making sure the stunts landed properly. The inclusion of color photographs by his then-wife, Luisa Mattioli, further personalizes the experience, offering visual glimpses into life on set beyond what fans saw in official publicity stills. Roger Moore later published additional memoirs, discussing not just his Bond career but also his philanthropic work with UNICEF and other personal anecdotes. These writings collectively shape our understanding of Moore's approach to Bond. He never took himself or the character too seriously, but he deeply respected the legacy and the fans' devotion to the series. Favorite gadget: the Rolex Submariner. Roger Moore singled out the Rolex Submariner from the film as his favorite Bond gadget. Equipped with a high-intensity magnet capable of deflecting bullets and a concealed buzzsaw, the watch was a highlight of Q Branch's arsenal. The scene where the watch's magnetic power is used to unzip Miss Caruso's dress required an elaborate setup, with a crew member lying on the floor using fishing wire to replicate the effect. After nearly 30 unsuccessful takes, the effect was finally achieved. Kananga, Mr. Big, and Crocodile stunts. The dual roles of Kananga and Mr. Big, masterfully played by Yaphet Kotto, added complexity to the plot. Interestingly, the creation of these characters was partly a tribute to Ross Kananga, the owner of the Jamaican crocodile farm that doubled as the Louisiana Bayou in the film. Kananga also performed the daring stunt of Bond running across crocodiles and alligators to get back onto dry land. A last-minute agent replacement. The role of the agent murdered in the pre-credit sequence went to Robert Dix, son of silent film star Richard Dix. Moore's mother was a devoted fan of the elder Dix, so he got the younger Dix cast as a replacement for the original actor who dropped out unexpectedly. Although Robert Dix appeared on screen as the British agent, his voice was dubbed by Canadian actor Shane Rimmer. Behind the taxi corpse trick to achieve the illusion of Roger Moore driving a taxi from the back seat, a combination of camera angles and stunt work was used. While Moore leaned over stunt driver Joey Chitwood's shoulder for close-ups, a stunt double took over for wider shots. Despite the complexities, Chitwood maintained complete control of the vehicle throughout, even while convincingly playing a dead man. No cue until Casino Royale. Unique among the Bond films until Casino Royale in 2006, Live and Let Die did not feature the Q character, Major Boothroyd, typically portrayed by Desmond Llewellyn. Producers Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman made a conscious decision to downplay the gadget-heavy aspect of the series, believing it had become overly prominent. The enigmatic Baron Samedi. The enigmatic Baron Samedi, introduced with a chilling effect in Live and Let Die, is depicted as a seemingly immortal figure, laughing triumphantly as he rides atop a train carrying Bond and Solitaire. His declaration of immortality suggests a character far more complex and powerful than a mere henchman. The filmmakers intended for Samedi to return in a later Bond film, a plan ultimately abandoned following the restructuring of Eon Productions. While his cinematic comeback never materialized, the character has found renewed life in various Bond video games. That wraps up our deep dive into Live and Let Die. We hope you've enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at one of the most distinctive Bond adventures ever made. If you found this video informative, or simply entertaining, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more cinematic trivia and classic movie deep dives. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.